Let me paint you a scene. You've been on an aeroplane for the better part of 24 hours, travelling all the way from Australia. You are en route to New York City. The year is 2013, Iron Man 3 has just crossed the $1 billion mark, and Marvel is on fire. You exit a yellow taxi en route to the Foxwood Theatre on a cold, rainy September evening. You have your tickets in hand for an experience that will either change your life or confuse the living shit out of you. You look up at the curtain as it ever so slightly waves in front of you like an old branch on a brisk day. You read the words written on this striking curtain carefully. Spider-Man, turn off the dark. You are me. The year is 2013, and you are about to witness the Spider-Man Broadway musical for the first time. You are confused as shit.
Come on, New York City! Let's get your freak on!
Let's just dial the clock back a few seconds, or maybe a few years to be exact. The year is 2002, the month is August, and the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film has just been released, and oh my god, it's a mammoth.
And they say that a hero can save us. I'm not gonna stand here and wait.
The film, in addition to crossing $850 million in 2002 worldwide, also received unbelievably good reviews. This was a genuinely shocking development for a comic book adaptation. Marvel, in a desperate attempt to keep the Spider-Man hype train moving, do what any movie studio at that time would do: get a Broadway musical off the ground. Marvel announced that Tony Adams will produce a Broadway musical based on the Spider-Man comic books. Adams, having absolutely no idea who or what a Spider-Man is, brought in his trusted apprentice David Garfinkel, who informed the famed producer that Spider-Man would simply flourish on the stage. Adams, like any dad, is a huge fan of the band U2, so he decided his first step in assembling a super team for this superhero would be hiring Bono and The Edge to write the music for this musical. According to Song of Spider-Man, a wonderful book written by Glenn Berger, Bono only signed on to the project as it gave him an opportunity to write a better musical than Andrew Lloyd Webber. Yeah, you heard that right. Bono and The Edge apparently loved the Broadway adaptation of The Lion King, and they thought that Julie Taymor, the director of that production, should helm this interpretation of Spider-Man. Adams, who was absolutely desperate to impress the U2 juggernauts, threw whatever he could at Taymor in order to obtain her signature. His plan? Promising the director unlimited creative freedom and the budget to do literally whatever she wanted, no matter how bizarre and ridiculous. Julie Taymor signed on for the project just like that. A few years later, in October of 2005, Bono, The Edge, Garfinkel, Taymor, and Adams were all assembled at The Edge's apartment to sign the Spider-Man musical contracts. With everything in place, the only thing missing was something as simple as a pen. The Edge, being an absolute sweetheart, decided to fetch one for the crew. When the guitarist returned, he discovered that Adams, the Nick Fury of this Avengers-like situation, suffered a massive heart attack and died just before the contracts were signed. Now, for most creatives, the death of the producer that brought the project to you in the first place would be enough to give you sort of bad vibes for the situation. Maybe you would step away from it thinking, the producer kind of died seconds before he signed the contract. Well, that wasn't the case for Bono, The Edge, or Julie Taymor, who went full steam ahead on Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
The music, Bono and Edge's music, as you would expect, is going to have high-octane rock and roll.
Shiny puppy blue, you should know what to do. They're gonna face a deep impression on you.
Because in a way, Bono is Peter Parker.
Okay, spider people.
As time went by, Taymor, using her Lion King success, ruled the production with an iron fist. Tamor's behaviour caused Bono and herself to butt heads on more than one occasion, adamant that characters like the geek chorus be in the show and that the main antagonist of the musical should be Arachne. Yes, as in Arachne from Roman and Greek mythology. That Arachne. Tamor's horrendous run at the wheel of this ship cost the musical a ridiculous amount of money. Under Tamor's lead, the budget ballooned well past the original whopping figure of $54 million. When Spider-Man officially opened on the 15th of March 2011, it cost $75 million. For comparison's sake, The Book of Mormon, which won the Tony Award for Best Musical in 2011, the same year Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark premiered, only cost $11.4 million. Spider-Man cost $75 million. The Book of Mormon cost $11.4 million. Oof. The budgetary problem actually found its way into the musical itself. During the song Freak Like Me Needs Company, the Green Goblin remarks, "I'm a $65 million circus tragedy." Actually, more like 75.
Let me ask you about the situation with Julie Taymor. What would you have done differently to prevent things from turning so ugly?
Holy smokes. Not use Julie Taymor. No, not take the job.
With the musicals behind the scenes a complete and utter disaster, including a record number 182 previews, a ridiculous amount of injuries, this hysterical video, and lackluster initial reviews, Bono, The Edge, and a few investors of the musical organised what Taymor refers to as Plan X. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Bono and co. developed a secret plan to rewrite the story and reorder the show to avoid the technical challenges with staging the finale. This all happened, Taymor says, through a series of discussions and meetings without her knowledge. Taymor says that its producers, Bono, Edge, and others worked on a twin-track approach, letting her pursue her own efforts as they secretly began to implement Plan X. I'm telling you, this would make the best modern adaptation of King Lear. I'm sorry, Succession, but Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark has you beat there. A mere 6 months after the show began, Bono and co. successfully attempted a coup d'etat. How do you spell it? Coup d'etat.
In France, we would say coup d'etat.
Coup d'etat. A mere 6 months after the show began, Bono, The Edge, and a few producers successfully implemented a coup d'etat and relieved Taymor of her directing duties. Taymor would later successfully sue Bono and co. for $500,000 in damages and compensation. Taymor demanded that the show open on the 15th of March 2011. For those history buffs out there, you would know that that was the exact same day Julius Caesar was stabbed by conspirators and former allies. I really doubt that this wasn't done on purpose. Now, there were two versions of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. One which began on November 28, 2010 and ended on the 17th of April 2011, and the other version which I saw, which started on June 14, 2011 and concluded on January 4th, 2014. I'm going to give you a rough outline of both versions of the musical, but I'm going to pay a little more attention to the first one because holy shit, it's a disaster.
Spider-Man has returned. You've won. So finish this dance once and for all. Kill me!
Okay, so let's start with Taymor's weird and fucking bonkers interpretation of Spider-Man. So here the geek chorus are seen in present day, essentially writing fan fiction in the form of the ultimate Spider-Man story. Despite their claim to do such a thing, the geek chorus decide to put Arachne in the musical as the main antagonist, except, you know, literally any other Spider-Man villain. Anyway, the first act of the musical is essentially just the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie with completely undeserving references to Greek mythology and dance numbers thrown in there. Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin appear in the show's rushed first act, with the act concluding with the death of a character. Now, the second act is where the musical really, and I mean really, falls off the rails. With the Green Goblin defeated, the geek chorus write in Arachne as the main antagonist. Her plot here makes absolutely zero sense. She is introduced in the first act as the spider that bites Peter Parker to give him the spider powers, I think, but then she's also bad and steals shoes and then wants to marry Peter Parker for some reason. I mean, look, makes absolutely no fucking sense. In the end of the musical, Arachne allows Peter to live with Mary Jane and she just dies. The musical ends with Spider-Man swinging into the night sky and the audience finally being able to leave. So yeah, it's pretty clear to see why that version of the musical was just a complete and utter failure. In addition to having zero logic and understanding of what the Spider-Man character represents, Taymor's vision just ultimately didn't make a lot of sense. This version of the musical never included the best song of all time, A Freak Like Me Needs Company, which is beautifully sung by the Green Goblin and the Sinister Six at the beginning of the second act in the second version of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. In fact, let's talk about that version right now. So the version of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark that I saw was so bad, but I just remember having the time of my fucking life. The image of the Green Goblin singing a song that essentially boils down to a coming out anthem was a truly special experience, and one that I'm very happy doesn't exist in digital media, so I feel that there's a little exclusivity to experiencing it. Now, I'm not necessarily sure if what I saw was any good. I know absolutely nothing about musicals, except that La La Land is pretty good. In version 2, a lot of the Arachne stuff was straight up gone. The character appears at the start as part of a book report given by Peter, and kinda pops up now and then, but all the stuff with the shoes and her marrying Peter Parker, that's all completely gone. Look, I'm not gonna bullshit any of you. The version I saw was not significantly better. It wasn't like the Snyder cut of the Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark experience, you know? Well, the version 1 was not the Whedon cut. It was still essentially the exact same musical, albeit one with a lot less bullshit in there. Version 2 of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark is essentially just the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie with a few great songs like A Freak Like Me Needs Company and Bouncing Off the Walls, some of the best and insanely original set, lighting and costume designs I've ever seen, and a real comic book come alive attitude. By taking away Arachne and the more obscure parts of the original version, Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark version 2 is a lot more lineal. It's more focused. It's more basic. But at the same time, it's a musical based on Spider-Man in which the Green Goblin sings a song about being a freak in New York and wanting other freaks to come dance with him. So in the end, it's not really that bland, is it? I mean, it's no Spider-Man Homecoming. It's a joke. I like those movies a lot. That's a joke. The musical I experienced was very much style over substance, and I kinda wish more people just accepted that. The ridiculously impressive stage and scenic design by Broadway and opera legend George Tispin is still drop-dead gorgeous to look at. I mean, check this shit out.
You know, there are many different representations of Manhattan in the show. In a way, we're looking at New York from a Spider-Man point of view. Spider-Man is not bound by gravity. Manhattan in the show is not bound by gravity either.
Of course, Broadway brings out the most pretentious in people, so anything based on a Marvel comic book on Broadway is going to be torn to fucking shreds, no matter how good or bad it actually was. Many critics who bore witness to both versions of Spider-Man have gone on record to say that if the production launched with the second version, the one with the song A Freak Like Me Needs Company, then the show probably would have avoided a huge chunk of negative press.
By the way, you're looking hot, Julie.
Alas, A Freak Like Me Needs Company was not enough to save Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
I want to interject a statement that you make 3 times in the book. Turn Off the Dark wasn't a show, it was a machine built by the gods to teach humility.
It's a tale as old as time if you really think about it. Look at the great empires that have fallen, the great leaders taken down because of such ego and selfishness. Bono, The Edge, and Julie Taymor are all to blame for what happened to Spider-Man. Had there been a little more humanity, kindness, and consideration between all those involved, we could have experienced a truly wonderful musical. Instead, clashing egos, the fear of being past your prime, and a wave of jealousy plagues Spider-Man and all those involved. In a few years' time, I'll ready my pitch for the behind-the-scenes HBO series based on the drama of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. In fact, here's the elevator pitch. Succession meets The Social Network with a singing, dancing Green Goblin in the background. Zac Efron can play someone, you know, I don't know, what's he doing nowadays? He's in Australia, he can come film it, he can play The Edge. In the end, I look back on Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark with a weird level of fondness. I mean, it was a complete disaster and a horrendous attempt to just milk a cow dry. But oddly enough, I am so delighted with the fact that I got to experience this thing that is so obscure, so terrible, so bad, that it didn't even make it in Vegas. There's something wonderful about the fact that I got to experience a musical that no one will ever see again. Like, I'm telling you, they will never do this musical again. And you know what? I think that's pretty cool.
Hey, look out.